Hi, my name's Dan Simon, and welcome to another episode of DisruptED TV. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Adam Coughran, president of Safe Kids, Inc., based out of sunny Orange County, California. All right, so Adam, why don't you go ahead and pick up where we were? You were just discussing the topic.
Right, so we talk about safety, and we think about the fences, and we think about, we hear a lot about metal detectors and cameras and access IDs and visitor passes. We learned very early on in law enforcement, there's three main parts to a crime. There's got to be the place the crime occurs, there's got to be the victim, and there's got to be the suspect or the crook, right? You take any one of those out, you take the place out, you can have a victim and a suspect, they all never meet if they're not in the same place. You can have the victims at the place, but the suspect never finds them, right? So you can see how this starts to work. So we talk about all the things about hardening the target. We hear a lot about hardening school targets. That's the place. We're trying to take the place out of the equation. Unfortunately, we know more often than not, it's someone who belongs in that school. It's a student, it may be a teacher, a parent. There are people who belong. They're familiar. So that's hard sometimes to take the place out. We talk about the suspect, and we think about all the behavioral cues and reporting to the police, but we've seen too, certain state laws or resources just, there simply aren't there. The one area we haven't really focused our attention on is the victim, right? And so when we think about the potential victims, that's where we want to take this program and give the victims, so to speak, a tool to not become victims, to increase that awareness, to let everything else work in concert with each other. But should all that fail, should we not catch the person ahead of time, or should they slip through, so to speak, we now have a final catch-all that people are empowered and they have the tools to know what to do should it find them in school or outside of school.
Right, and the outside of school piece is interesting, and I won't go there because I think if there's time at the end, maybe. Yeah. But it would seem to me that this model would be applicable to any business. I mean, when you think about what's the plan for, a facility like this that's fairly simple, one floor, or a facility where there's multiple floors, and you're only dealing with adults. Adults need a plan too. Adults need some direction on that as well. So it would be very interesting as you continue to grow and see your success as to whether there's a certain appeal to branch out beyond the education sector and really harness this in other ways. Has that already been something you're talking about?
Yeah, and so we talk about research-based and evidence-based. Obviously the program was research-based, but it has become evidence-based a couple times. We touched on our school shooting, but in the development of the HERO program, we started with adults. We actually trained adults to see, okay, is this concept going to work really ahead of time? And we partnered with one of our, it's a national hotel brand. And we said, hey, we have a captive audience, a lot of people, kind of similar to a school, people coming in, they're going out, same concept. So we trained about 65 adults at a hotel. Within a couple of weeks was the Mandalay Bay shooting, with 10 of those people in that class being at the Mandalay Bay shooting. Wow. All 10 survived, and all 10 told us their story of, again, it being reactionary. They said, I remembered the concepts, I understood what you meant, and I did X and I did Y, depending where I was to help survive. And this is people that were near the concert, next door to the concert, in other areas where people were panicking. And so that was our first kind of litmus test, evidence-based, that the concept worked with adults. And then that's when we moved our pilots into schools, and then we saw it again.
That has to be visible on the website, like those kinds of things, that evidence is what people want to hear. I mean, you can throw data, make data say whatever you want to say, but when someone has lived through a situation like that and said that this program and the tools that I was provided with helped me escape or helped me survive, there is no greater testament for the program than that. Yeah. So now let's get down to the nitty gritty here, all right? We talked about the curriculum. We mentioned the curriculum, but I'm sure that our audience now I'm sure their appetite is wet. They want to hear now about the curriculum. Right. And I want to start with this point. You said to me as we were talking beforehand that you were very focused on being teacher friendly in this process of developing this. So before we get into the curriculum, can you just explain what you meant by that and how you were mindful of being teacher friendly in developing this curriculum?
Well, my mom was a fourth grade teacher growing up, so I have a heart, obviously, and grew up in that educational household. So as we developed it, obviously I had my mom in mind, but we talked about teachers all over, and we know that we always add to their plate, right? We're always telling more and more responsibility, and we never really take anything off that plate. So what we wanted to do is create a curriculum and the program to where it not only helped teachers, but it didn't feel like yet something else they have to do. So we started by making it Common Core ELA compliant. Now, sometimes that's a naughty word when it comes to education, and we understand that, but we wanted it to where instead of doing maybe that extra English lesson or the extra English book or the story,
roll it in.
Yeah, let's roll our stories and our curriculum in. They can roll one of those out, so we're not adding to the already compressed time frame that educators have. We already have too much and not enough hours. The last thing we want to do is add on all these extra hours to it. The other thing we want to give them a script. Again, this is areas that with a teaching credential, we're subject matter experts in math and in English and all these things. We're not necessarily in survival.
No,
that's not something unless you maybe former military or law enforcement. So we wanted to provide a script and a way for them to start to feel comfortable with the concepts. And then especially for the newer teachers to earn your continuing education credits. And so we've partnered with local Southern California University to offer the continuing ed credits for using the program in the classroom. So we wanted to really, I mean, if teachers are going to be using this, we didn't want to be like, I got to teach a hero lesson today. We wanted something that was engaging, that it's actually a little bit of a give back to them and to the community.
I mean, again, those kind of incentives, just being mindful of that, I think is really important. It shows that you truly understand the education circle, where there is a tendency with a lot of programs to be that. It's an add-on, it's something else. So to be mindful of being able to kind of incorporate it into what teachers are already doing, I think kudos to you and your team for thinking about that, because people who don't understand education and what teachers do don't understand what teachers do.
Yeah.
So I think being mindful of that is really important, and I'm sure that the teachers will value that, as well as the fact that it's beneficial to them to have something that is going to be keeping them and their students safe.
We tell them, at the end of our professional development, we tell them, look, you are our heroes. The teachers are. They're going to be the ones that are in the fray if something happens. They're the ones who are overburdened and underpaid.
They're the first responders.
They're really the first responders. They're the emergency workers. So in our opinion, they're our heroes, and we want to make their job as easy as possible.
That's so great, Adam. All right, so now back to the curriculum. So you talked to me a little bit about the structure, starting with PD. Why don't we talk a little bit about that? Start with what's the professional development component, the training component look like, and then we'll delve a little bit into the actual curriculum. So let's start with PD. Tell us a little bit about what that entails.
So the PD is about 2 hours on the short end and a half day on the long end. And it really depends on the amount of engagement that a school may or may not want. Okay. So we look at, it comes out, there's about an hour to hour and a half of the hero program. So what does that sound like, look like? What are the survival concepts? Things like, do you let people in the door after they've barricaded? Things like, how do you danger run or how do you fun run? What's the concept of overcoming and these types of things? So you'll get those concepts to begin to become a subject matter expert in some of that.
And gauge what they already know.
Correct. And that is for every school employee, every district employee. I mean, it's everything from your custodial staff to your superintendent, everyone in between. We want everyone within a district or at a school to be on the same page, because we never know who might be that first person to encounter this subject. Beyond that, for the teachers, we have a curriculum unboxing or unrolling, and we tell you how the lesson plans work, how it should look like in a classroom, how you use the classroom management components of it, how should you structure parts of your lesson. Okay. But at the end of the day, we let the teachers really put their verbiage into it, their spin on it. We say at the top of every lesson, the safety components do not change. Here's a script. Feel free to add or take away as you see fit of what you're used to and normal to.
So they can own it. Right?
So they can really own it. And a lot of watching it unfold and watching classrooms, they do own it. Different teachers own it in totally different ways. Yes. We don't add anything. A question we get is there guns in there? Is there killing? No, we don't use guns, knives, bombs, stabbing, killing, tanks, nothing. We use no verbiage about weaponry or about people actually getting hurt.
That's big.
We let the students name it. So we let the students name their fear. We let them drive the conversation based upon what they want to talk about in their neck of the woods. We know that some places that guns are very common in the household and culture.
The gang in the backyard, right? In the one school.
Yeah. So we let them decide what that fear is, what that invader character is for them, and then they get to build the concepts out around what they want to talk about.
Right. So that PD, that 2 hour half, that's what you were referring to before, where at the end of that, people were moving from a 2 or 3 to a 6, 7, or 8.
6, 7, and 8. And then at the full completion of the program, you have them moving up into the 8s and the 9s. because in those lesson plans are additional safety notes. So there's additional learning for the teachers going on behind the scenes as they teach the lessons.
Okay, so that's a great segue into the program. So the way that you explained to me that it's designed is there's a K3, there's a 4-5, there's a 6 to 8.
Correct.
And you're in development for a 9 through 12.
Correct.
A year away, let's just say? Or?
Yeah, about a year away.
Okay, good. So in each of those, they're age appropriate, not a lot of repetition. It's not like you're seeing the same thing in K1, 2, 3. So to kind of get that out of the way, we know how the grade levels are structured. Talk a little bit about what the design of the lesson is, both in terms of logistics and in terms of content. You know, what does that look like? And then if you're able, maybe share what would a sample of a kindergarten lesson be, a 3rd grade lesson and a 7th grade lesson, just to give a perspective. So again, so our audience knows, oh, that's not relevant for me. Well, if you get a chance to hear what the sample is at each level, it might be useful.
So the K through 3, the 4, 5, all the different grade levels, the structure is identical. So the same components in the lesson plans will be in every single one. We start with the key learning components. So what do we need to get out of this lesson? So it'll be hide without delay or escape without delay, and some of the 2 or 3 components of what that looks like. Then we have the materials needed. So we list, here's what you'll need. You'll need a whistle, or you need a sticky notes, or you'll need scrap paper. Okay. We let them know. Beyond that, we talk about really the hook. And so it's bringing the kids into it. So at the K through 3, we open with a Venn diagram of people who hurt and people who help. And we get in the little kids to the ability to understand people want to help them in life and people want to hurt them, and who are those people? Wow. We got asked a lot, hey, wait a minute, hold on here. What's the understanding of these kids? From the kindergarten, this came right out of the pilots. When they said people who harm, by name, Nazis, Hitler, the Las Vegas guy, Cholos, El Chapo, and those are all by names. And then you have, the monster in my bed, the boogeyman.
Kindergarten.
But these kindergartners are naming either people or ideologies at that level. So the concept is that history is permeating itself down to very, very young levels.
Interesting point. By the way, before you go on, you're hitting on that whole theme that we're big on at DisruptED TV about student voice and not often giving enough credit to student voice. Even as early as kindergarten, student voice is critical, because if we don't ask them, we don't know what they know. And by asking, look what you found out.
Yeah. And then we look at the middle of the Venn diagram. And so we'll see police officers end up in there in certain communities. They arrested my brother because he's a gang member, but he helps me when I'm lost. And they can kind of understand some of those differences. We see doctors in there. They like doctors until they have to take medicine or get a shot. And so it gets them kind of into an area of understanding. And then when we talk about the HERO program, we talk about the HERO program is used for people who are harmful or who may want to hurt us. And that begins the concept. And so as you run into the HERO, the H of the HERO program, hiding, we talk about how do you hide? Like, where should we be hiding? We talk about hideouts and holdouts in the classroom. And so the adult equivalent is cover or concealment if you're in the military or law enforcement. And so we talk about, out of sight, out of mind, and what does that mean versus being in a safe place or like a hard corner of the room, meaning that should something harmful come through that door, i.e. if someone's shooting through your door, where can you be in that room that's the safest where those bullets may not potentially hit you? We don't say it in that manner, obviously, in the lesson plans, but some of those concepts are built around, okay, we barricade, we got stuff in the doors, now what do we do?
This is kindergarten.
This is kindergarten. And as that same lesson ramps up to 4th and 5th grade, those who are near the door are the builders. And so they have a special job to push the desks and the chairs and everything because they're the closest to the doors, while others are grabbing different things to move or to get in their hideouts or their holdouts throughout the classroom. And then when we move into the middle school, instead of people who hurt and people who help, we talk about the personal safety continuum. And it's a continuum on the board of I don't feel safe at all to I feel super safe. And they're asked to take Post-it notes and say, at school, where do you fall? On the bus, where do you fall? At home, where do you fall? At the movie theater. So we can see, depending upon where these kids live and maybe what's happening to them, if they don't feel safe on the bus, why?
That's a great point, too, because the safe thinkers, right? We don't want that to be just a safe thinker while I'm in school, right?
Correct.
The safe thinker mentality, again, using the Las Vegas example of what they learned, those 10 folks were not in a school environment, whether they were in the building or out, they had the concepts to be able to apply, which is the idea here, the bus ride home, the neighborhood, the park, wherever you may be, the mall, wherever you may be, those concepts are relevant regardless of the context.
Correct. And we really, that really leads into the home and community piece, which is in the program. So as they wrap their lesson up and as they get the concept, they practice the concept, now we go to wrap it up. Number one, there's a journaling component. So the kids have to journal how they feel. So we've gotten triggering events, things that are happening in the home, childhood abuse, parents in domestic violence situations, because now they're built on empowerment theory, these kids are starting to feel okay sharing some things maybe in a journal, or if they're triggered for some reason, there's something that's happening to them that's causing some adverse reaction within the program. And then we have a community piece. So that's where they go home and they talk to their parents about what they learned, and they show them how to danger run. They show them different things with a parent companion guide for the parents that they can download right off the website. Nice. And then they can ask the questions as a teach back at home to check for understanding. And also they can learn. Because if they're at the mall or they're at the restaurant, your kids are probably now going to be more prepared than you're going to be as a parent to do something.
Now, you mentioned something just a moment ago I think is important. And I think this is where sometimes the resistance comes from the teachers in the past, in my experience, is again, that feeling of not being prepared. So now they're prepared to deliver these lessons, but when you get that student who writes in the essay something about what's going on at home or an abusive situation or something in there, and that's coming out now, what provision is there now for that teacher who is probably not prepared to address that? What guidance is provided for them about where they should now go to help this student address that need?
Right. And so we look at, especially out in California, we're called mandated reporters, and a lot of places around the country have. When a teacher or a nurse or someone comes up, police officers with this information, we have to act on it. We have to do something. What we've seen is when this boils up, they begin by talking to their principal about it. Hey, look, so and so has said this. I have some concerns about maybe some abuse that's happening at home. That can, again, depending on the district, can go to the school psychologist, the school counselor for further investigation, local police department potentially. We, and coming out of an investigative role of sex crimes and crimes against children, we want the teachers to read the journals before the parents do. Because, all too often we've investigated crimes where the parents are trying to silence their kids because it might be a stepfather or a stepbrother or something that's happening behind the scenes, and it's going to cause a large impact in the life of that family.
It's a tough spot for a teacher to be in.
That's a tough spot.
Right? Yeah.
So we talk about, the teachers read it first. At the end of the program, the parents get the journal so they can read the entire journal, but we wanted it really screened first to make sure that we can help get some kids that might be being abused at home or maybe even out of the home that the parents don't know about. Let's get them some help. Let's at a young level stop the abuse and not let it go on and on and on until now maybe they're in junior high or high school. Now we have years of abuse now that they're old enough to speak about it.
Have you any data or even anecdotally to say that has actually happened as a result, that something's been uncovered as a result of that?
Sure enough. I mean, this pilot program was really something else when we reflect back at it. We did have a student who that started to boil up to the top that something was going on at home, and ended up being an abusive relationship between mom and dad. The child, thank goodness, was not in the abuse, but was a partaken witness to the violence at home. And so we were able to start to get some resources for that family via the school and the reporting once they really vetted what the journal said.
Right. I mean, fascinating to me. I mean, all of this is just so, and you've really, I must say you've thought of everything, but I think that's because you involved educators in the process. I think when you think about, you probably had a lot of these ideas, but maybe half of these ideas are directly as a result of the folks, again, in the trenches dealing with this every day, saying, hey, you got to think about this, and we've got to find a way to incorporate this in the PD and in the delivery of the program. And you said before, you're very reflective as well, using the feedback to tweak or modify the program as you see fit. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct. And we look at this is not really a static curriculum. We think about all the traditional things we use. Math hasn't changed a lot, unless with some recent changes.
Except for that new math.
Except for that new math thing, right? But English, the same stories. There's new ones, but there's not a lot of new concepts necessarily that are introduced. This particular curriculum every month is something new. And so we call it a living curriculum. So every year it changes and it morphs. Even mid-pilot, we saw the use of fire alarms being used to draw students out of classrooms in some of the shootings.
Right.
So immediately we made a change within the PD to talk about in the escape module to escape, how do you do that? And if there's a fire drill or if the fire alarm goes off, how do you safely get out of a room during a fire drill?
A lockdown/fire drill, and which one supersedes the other. Right.
And then we also put that into the lesson plans. So that way when we talk about escaping, we have them reflect back on their fire alarms and their fire drills. And at the little kids, it's like crossing the street. We tell them to look left and look right before you leave in the classroom. A quick look, engage your senses to make sure, yes, this is a fire drill. Yes, we are supposed to be doing it. And before you just kind of run out the door, let's look real quick, see what's going on, and if something is, there's the invaders outside. We're going to hide now. We're going to disregard maybe the fire alarm because of some different issues. So.
Now, have you also seen? I assume part of this is that the school itself, their security plan must evolve after this training, because there's again, you have maybe a static plan that you've been using that's very step by step. But this now becomes, again, very organic. Is part of the goal essentially that the school now revisits their own plan and revises and updates to make it appropriate?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, most school safety plans were written years ago with a little tweak here and a little tweak there. And a lot of them, I truly believe, are out of date based on what we know is happening, right? So yeah, let's revisit. Let's talk about if we have to escape, and we talk about the way they escape. We have a plan to get these kids back to a reunification point or a rally point after the fact.
Right.
We have good communication to the parents on where to pick your kids up and what's going on. So it does
thinking of everything.
Correct. We've kind of given them a template and let them refine it and how it looks for their school.
Nice. That's fantastic. So we are coming towards the end, and I want to hit on one other basic thing. You did mention that the school program really crosses over private, public. It's essentially the same program, but you do also have an after-school program that's designed for, say, your boys and girls clubs or your YMCAs or any type of an after-school program. It's modified appropriately for the context. Is that
correct? So in the after-school program, where in the school you have lesson plans and a drill and scenario guide, and you have all these things for whole school adoption. In the after-school program, kids are wiggly, right? They've been in a classroom all day. So it's a 2-page front and back activity sheet. It takes all the concepts from the school program, boils them down into concepts and activities that allows them to engage with after school. So it's a little bit more physically engaging, much shorter. We realize they're not credentialed teachers in after-school programs by and large. And it simplifies the program, same professional development, same concepts that they're getting, but now it's a much easier and shorter delivery.
You really have thought of everything. One final thought before I give you a chance to give a final statement. So everything, training all online. You're paying for somebody to come out and do the training. So talk a little bit about the logistics, and then just generically about the cost. I mean, is this affordable? In terms of how much would you need to allocate in a budget? Just give some perspective on that, logistics and cost.
Absolutely. So the entire program lives online. So we say if you have a computer and the internet, you can use the program in your school, wherever that might be. We do have professional trainers that some schools might not have the bandwidth nor the ability to add on to their current professional development facilitators. It does come with a facilitation guide. You can use it with your current facilitators, or you can request a Safe Kids facilitator for the program. Okay. So we have the ability for both, what works well. The program, the online, is both blended, so it can be used in a large format or individually, because we also know that there's different MOUs and different agreements on how PD is developed. So you have the ability to use both of those. And the cost is per student less than a cup of coffee and a croissant for the year, quite literally. Wow. So we wanted to, by design...
I'm not giving up my coffee, maybe the croissant.
Right, yeah, but the coffee, right? Yeah, priorities. But yeah, for less than the cost of probably your breakfast this morning,
that covers the cost for a student for the whole year.
Yep, and the cost is built in. So that cost per student covers all the teacher development. It covers the entire breadth of the program. There's no extras. There's no, but you got to pay this for the PD and that for the guide. And that, nope, the whole thing's in for less than a croissant and a cup of coffee.
I think it's fantastic. Listen, I'm going to give you an opportunity now, I think, to look directly in the camera, Adam. And why don't you, again, give your name, how people can reach you, maybe your website, and any final thoughts that you have. I'd say just give it a shot. Go right into the camera and share.
So all of our contact, all of our information is available at safekidsinc.com. All of our social media is at Safe Kids Inc. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can come and look at all of our stuff. You can look at the family stuff. That's all available for download. We have Ask Your Kids Safe Thinking guides, event guides. How do you talk to your kids about violence? We have parent resources on the website to continue the conversation even outside of the HERO program. At Safe Kids Inc., we really want to be what we believe is the trusted source for childhood safety. And it starts with the HERO program. And so we put really our heart and soul, I think, as you've heard today, and gotten a lot of the collaboration together to make your job as a parent and as an educator just a little bit simpler, so we can kind of hold and really walk in step with you in safety, especially as our kids grow up. So again, my name is Adam Coughran. You can reach me also on LinkedIn, Adam-Coughran, C-O-U-G-H-R-A-N, Adam@safekidsinc.com as well. So all of our contact, everything is at the website, on our social media, and really look forward to engaging with everyone here and everyone here soon.
It has been an absolute pleasure, Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing and for what you're doing to keep our kids safe and to prepare our educators for those situations they find themselves in that no one ever wants to and wants to think about, but you want to be prepared in any case. And I'm just so impressed by everything that you're doing and really being mindful of the educational component of all of this. So
great.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name's Dan Simon. This is DisruptED TV. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.